When you type a question into an AI search box today, there is this quiet, almost unconscious assumption that you are consulting the modern oracle of Delphi.
Right, like it is this perfectly sterile, objective thing.
Exactly. You ask a complex question about a major life decision, and the interface sort of implies that the machine has instantly parsed the entire universe of data.
Yeah, weighed every variable without any bias.
Right, and is handing down the undisputed mathematical truth. But the reality is, the oracle is not objective at all. It has incredibly specific, heavily biased, and honestly bizarre reading habits.
Bizarre is definitely the right word for it.
It really is. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a June 2026 research report published by an agency called Geology. And the data proves that when you ask an AI for advice on major purchases, you aren't getting a calculated optimization.
Not even close.
You're getting a highly distorted, high-tech game of digital telephone. So to unpack exactly whose advice you are actually getting, I am sitting down with the founder of Geology, the architect behind this exact research.
Thanks for having me. We really designed this study to test the blind faith that, users are just pouring into these generative interfaces right now.
Which is so needed.
Yeah.
So tell us about the setup. How did you actually test this?
The methodology was pretty straightforward, but very comprehensive. We took 100 real U.S. insurance buyer questions.
Okay.
These were prompts covering auto, home, renters, life, pet, small business, and disability insurance. And we fed those exact same prompts into 4 major AI engines with web search enabled.
So these are the big ones.
Right. ChatGPT running the 4.1 model, Perplexity using their Sonar model, Google's Gemini 2.5 Flash, and Google AI overviews.
Got it. And you were looking for specific brands.
Exactly. We tracked 15 different insurers across these outputs, everything from century-old legacy brands to the newer tech-first insurtech companies, just to see, who the AI is actually recommending to you.
And the results completely shatter the illusion of the AI as an all-knowing oracle.
Oh, completely. It reveals that the AI acts basically as a massive amplification engine for the old guard.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand how the AI thinks, we first need to look at who it ultimately recommends.
Right.
And across ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Gemini, the massive legacy incumbent brands, State Farm, Progressive, Nationwide, USAA.
The giants.
The giants, yeah. They take 78 to 82% of all insurer mentions.
It is a massive monopoly.
It really is.
Yeah.
And even on Google AI overviews, which the data shows is, I guess, the most balanced of the 4, incumbents still capture 66% of the mentions.
Yeah, and State Farm and Progressive lead the entire pack. They appear in 34% and 33% of every single answer on average.
It feels like having a supposedly super intelligent, futuristic travel agent, but every time you ask for a unique local hotel, they just point you to the nearest Marriott or Hilton.
That is a perfect analogy. What's fascinating here is the concept of share of voice.
Right.
The prevailing assumption in the tech industry was that generative AI would be this great democratizer,
That it would level the playing field.
Exactly. People thought AI would parse the fundamental merits of a product. Like it would look at premium costs, API integrations, coverage limits, and realize that some new tech-savvy company is actually better.
But it doesn't do that.
No. It heavily reinforces the biggest, oldest players in the room.
Which, honestly, it makes perfect sense when you consider how large language models actually establish relationships between concepts.
Because of the training data.
Exactly. In the probability distribution of an LLM, words that appear most frequently together form the strongest synaptic links. State Farm was founded in, 1922?
Yep, and Progressive in 1937.
Right, so they have spent billions of dollars over decades to saturate the media landscape.
They have a century of press releases, news articles, legal filings, and foreign mentions baked into the baseline weights of these models.
So when a model is predicting the next most logical token in a sentence about auto insurance, statistically, that token is just going to be State Farm based on sheer textual mass.
Right. The models are essentially mistaking sheer brand ubiquity for quality and relevance.
Which is a dangerous swap to make.
Very. When an AI is synthesizing vast amounts of conflicting data, or if your prompt is just slightly ambiguous, the generation engine falls back on the brands that occupy the largest volume in its vector space.
The legacy incumbents serve as a default safety blanket.
Precisely.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because the logical leap most people make is that, okay, if the AI is aggressively pushing these legacy brands, it must be reading their official websites and policy documents to verify that they are the best, right?
But that is completely wrong.
Right. The most jarring data point in the Geology report is about the source material. When ChatGPT provides an answer and cites its sources, it only links to actual carrier websites 1% of the time.
1 out of 100 links.
Just one. If I ask a direct question about a brand's policy limits and the AI isn't even reading the brand's own website, isn't this a massive game of digital telephone?
It absolutely is. That 1% stat perfectly illustrates the vulnerability in retrieval augmented generation, or RAG.
Break that down for us.
So, because these engines have web search enabled, they aren't just relying on their base training weights. They take your prompt, query a background search engine, pull the text from the top-ranking URLs, inject that text into their context window, and then synthesize an answer.
But they are bypassing the primary sources.
Systematically bypassing them, yes. Our data shows that these RAG systems are basically ignoring corporate sources entirely.
And we can see exactly what they're reading instead.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you start to see the different diets of these four engines.
Diets, I like that. So what is ChatGPT eating?
ChatGPT gets 47% of its citations from editorial aggregators.
So sites like MoneyGeek, Forbes, NerdWallet.
Exactly. It seems heavily biased towards structured, professionally formatted listicles.
Ah. So if an article is titled The 10 Best Auto Insurers for 2026, ChatGPT just treats that as a goldmine of pre-synthesized data.
Right, because the parser in ChatGPT's search module actively struggles with convoluted corporate websites.
I mean, insurance websites are terrible to navigate.
They are notoriously dense. You have to input a zip code, navigate dynamic pricing modules, click through 5 layers of interactive menus just to see a base rate.
An LLM text scraper just cannot navigate that friction.
It gives up. But a Forbes article presents all that comparative data in a clean, easily ingestible markdown table.
So the AI takes the path of least computational resistance.
Yeah, right.
It trusts the editorial aggregator to have done the primary research.
Which introduces a massive layer of editorial bias. If Forbes decides a specific company isn't worth featuring this year, ChatGPT simply adopts that omission as objective reality.
That is wild, but then you look at Perplexity, and its diet is completely different.
Completely different architectural philosophy.
Yeah, the report says out of the 100 answers Perplexity generated, it cited Reddit 75 times.
75 out of 100. Its RAG pipeline basically runs on user-generated content.
Why Reddit, though?
Perplexity's search algorithm, Sonar, is engineered to hunt for semantic markers of human experience. It actively seeks out phrases like, I just filed a claim or my premium spiked after.
It wants real stories.
Right. By heavily weighting a domain like Reddit, which relies on user upvotes and community moderation, Perplexity is trying to bypass all that SEO spam that clogs up standard search results.
But outsourcing quality control to Reddit introduces its own systemic flaws.
Oh, massive flaws.
I mean, online forums have a massive inherent negativity bias. You rarely log onto an anonymous message board to write a 500-word essay about a perfectly average experience with your home insurance.
Exactly. You go to Reddit when you're furious about a denied claim.
So if Perplexity is treating that furious sentiment as the baseline reality, it is feeding users a highly skewed perspective of a company's actual reliability.
Definitely. It does still cite carrier sites about 30% of the time, usually leaning on Liberty Mutual or Geico, but Reddit is its absolute favorite for qualitative analysis.
And then there's Gemini.
Gemini 2.5 Flash kind of sits in the middle. It pulls heavily from a mix of Forbes, Insurify, and Money.com.
So you have these distinct AI engines, all supposedly answering the same objective question for you, but they are playing telephone across completely isolated networks.
One is summarizing a NerdWallet article, another is aggregating anonymous Reddit complaints, and a third is reading completely different editorial reviews.
And I noticed a major divergence with Google AI overviews in the data.
Yeah, Google AIO is fascinating.
It gives a 17% share of its citations to digital marketplaces like Policy Genius, The Zebra, and Insurify. But the crazy part is how heavily it pulls from YouTube.
Which the text-based chat engines almost never touch.
Right. But it makes perfect architectural sense because Google owns YouTube.
They have a native integration.
Exactly. They don't have to send a superficial web crawler to scrape a dynamic page. They have direct API access to parse the underlying transcripts of millions of video reviews instantly.
They can bypass text entirely to extract video sentiment. That gives Google AI overviews a distinct structural advantage.
But the overarching reality for all four engines is still the same. The AI is an aggregator of aggregators.
It relies entirely on third-party synthesis rather than primary investigation.
So knowing all this, if I am a digital marketing director for a challenger brand like a new insert tech company trying to disrupt this space, I am terrified looking at this data set.
It is a daunting landscape.
I cannot outspend Geico. I mean, they received 59 mentions just in the auto insurance category. I cannot beat them to dominate the foundational LLM training weights.
No, the historical mass is too big.
And I probably lack the historical prestige to organically land on a Forbes top 10 list. The data makes it clear you cannot win a broad land war on the main continent against the incumbents.
You really can't. In generic, broad queries, the challenger brands disappear entirely.
Like who?
Companies like Root, Hippo, and Embroker, they barely register at all. They received only 1 or 2 mentions out of 400 possible answers across the 4 engines.
Total visibility detriment.
Exactly. But the data reveals a secondary battlefield. Insurtechs aren't totally invisible, they just win in highly specific fenced-off niches.
It's like the challenger brands realized they can't win the land war, so they sailed off and became kings of their own private islands.
That is exactly what is happening. When the prompt narrows down to a highly specific utility, the landscape inverts.
Give me an example from the report.
Next, insurance absolutely dominates the small business prompts. They secured 50 mentions, completely sidelining Progressive and Nationwide in that category.
50 mentions, and Lemonade executes the exact same maneuver, right?
Yeah, Lemonade completely owns renter's insurance with 19 mentions and pet insurance with 16 mentions.
So mechanically, these challenger brands are achieving massive semantic density within a very narrow vector.
That is the technical term for it, yes.
By associating their brand almost exclusively with renters or small business across every digital surface, they create an undeniable concentrated signal for the RG systems.
They abandon the broad vector of insurance, where the legacy giants have an insurmountable parameter weight and instead isolate one specific node to monopolize.
Because for a challenger, these specific lines are the only realistic battlegrounds.
It is the only viable survival strategy in the generative search era. If you attempt to compete on a high-volume, generic keyword, the AI's contextual window just gets flooded by the history of the incumbents.
You must force the AI to evaluate a highly specific attribute where the legacy brands have less concentrated third-party coverage.
Right. You have to convince the architecture that while you may not be the largest insurer, you are the undisputed mathematical champion of pet insurance for golden retrievers.
So what does this all mean for the listener? Zooming out from just the insurance sector, this dynamic represents a massive shift in how information is engineered and discovered on the internet.
We are witnessing the rapid transition from traditional SEO to generative engine optimization, or GEO.
And GEO is a completely different beast. For the last 20 years, the corporate playbook was straightforward. Optimize your own primary domain.
Right, you write clean headers, improve site load speed, acquire backlinks.
And Google rewarded you by placing your official website at the top. But GEO dictates that your primary domain is practically irrelevant to the AI's synthesis process.
This raises an important question for brands. How do you control your narrative now?
You have to actively engineer your presence on the specific third-party surfaces that each distinct AI engine prefers to read.
Because of the fragmented retrieval diets we talked about, a monolithic, generalized marketing strategy will fail. What works for Perplexity won't necessarily work for Gemini.
Right, because to achieve visibility on Perplexity, a brand's product must be organically discussed, debated, and upvoted in highly niche Reddit communities.
But pouring resources into a Reddit community yields zero return on investment for Gemini or ChatGPT.
Because their architectures are actively hunting for structured data tables in editorial aggregators like Forbes.
So a business now has to reverse engineer the distinct ARG weighting of each individual AI engine and run parallel, highly siloed optimization campaigns.
The operational complexity of that is staggering.
Digital PR teams must constantly monitor what third-party aggregators are publishing regarding their pricing models or their customer service metrics.
They have to actively lobby to correct or enhance data on platforms they do not even own.
If a major marketplace like the Zebra lists outdated premium data for your product, Google AI Overviews will ingest that bad data, synthesize it, and present it to millions of users as verified fact.
Which radically alters how you, as a consumer, need to evaluate the outputs of these tools.
Definitely.
When you ask an AI for a recommendation, you are not receiving a purely computational analysis of the best available product.
No, you are receiving a blended summary.
A summary of whichever company executed the most aggressive PR strategy to penetrate Forbes, combined with whoever has the most vocal user base on Reddit, anchored by the sheer inertia of century-old legacy brands that the AI defaults to when it lacks a definitive answer.
It completely strips away the illusion of the omniscient oracle. These models are incredibly sophisticated text predictors, but they are entirely tethered to the chaotic, biased, and heavily manipulated realities of the human internet.
Let's quickly distill the core mechanics of this deep dive. First, foundational LLM weights heavily favor legacy incumbents. The AI loves them and routinely mistakes brand ubiquity for quality.
Yep.
Second, RAG architectures systematically bypass primary corporate websites, pulling their data almost exclusively from third-party
The
aggregators.
1% rule.
Third, each engine utilizes a highly specific retrieval diet. ChatGPT targets editorial listicles, Perplexity relies heavily on Reddit, and Google taps into YouTube.
And fourth, challenger brands can only survive this ecosystem by abandoning broad visibility and dominating hyper-specific niches on those third-party sites.
Which leaves us with a critical forward-looking complication to mull over.
This is the part that keeps me up at night.
If generative engines increasingly source their answers from editorial listicles and Reddit threads,
And corporate brands are now actively deploying generative engine optimization to systematically manipulate those exact third-party surfaces.
we are accelerating toward a closed loop. We will eventually reach a point where AI engines are scraping the web, only to read AI-generated PR copy disguised as organic human advice, placed there specifically for the AI to find.
And endless digital Ouroboros.
Got it.
AI writing articles and seeding forum posts solely so other AI architectures can read them, synthesize them, and recommend products to human users.
Users who think they are getting independent research. And if so, what does independent research even look like for the modern consumer? When the oracle is just listening to the echoes of its own generated content, verifying the truth becomes the most complex skill of the modern era.
It is going to be a wild ride.
It really is. Keep questioning the invisible architectures behind the search box, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.